So on today's chat, I would like to talk to you about some definitions. I've gotten lots of questions about what's the difference between social distancing, physical distancing, isolation, quarantine, and self-isolation. So I'll start with the one that affects all of us, and that's social distancing. So this is something where it doesn't matter whether or not you have the virus or whether or not you've been in contact with anyone with the virus, we are all expected to do this. So what it means is trying to spend as little time as possible interacting with other people. So if you have the option to work from home, please do so. Avoiding all non-essential trips outside of the home, no social gatherings, no visiting of friends or family, and when you do need to go outside for essential trips like picking up groceries or filling the car with gas, that you maintain a 2-meter distance away from other people at all times. The reason for the 2-meter distance is that we know that the droplets that people cough or sneeze don't stay in the air for very long. So if you're 2 meters away, theoretically they'll cough into the air and those droplets fall before they can reach you 2 meters away. So like I said, this is something we all need to do to try to reduce the spread of this virus because we don't know which of us has it. And as we've talked about in some previous videos, it is possible to spread it even if you don't know you have it, even though that's not the most efficient way. It's much more efficient when you're sick. But if we all can stay home as much as possible, work from home, no social gatherings, and keeping that 2 meter when we're doing essential things, that will make a huge difference in controlling this outbreak. Physical distancing is the same thing as social distancing. Many of us have started using the term physical distancing because we don't actually want you to avoid socializing. So if you can use phone or video chat or online or even regular letter writing, it's great to stay connected with friends and family. What we truly want is for you to be physically separated from other people. So those two terms can be used interchangeably, and really the physical distancing is probably the better term for what we want of people, and so that's why you hear both of those being used. Isolation, on the other hand, refers to someone who has the infection. So if you are infected with COVID-19, you are expected to avoid everyone. In this case, as opposed to social distancing, we're saying you can't even go out for essential things. So someone else needs to go pick up your groceries or fill the car up with gas. We expect somebody who has the infection and who is on isolation to stay home 100% of the time. In fact, we even expect them to be separated from people within their own home. So ideally, they should have their own bedroom, their own bathroom, and be using a mask when they're interacting with people in the home, because we're trying to avoid even other people in their home from getting that infection when we know it's there. Obviously, it's not possible for everyone to have their own bedroom and their own bathroom, so I would encourage you to connect with public health if you have COVID-19 and you're not able to do this, because we want to provide you as much support and supplies as possible to help you prevent the infection in your loved ones. Quarantine. Quarantine is actually a legal term. So it comes from the Federal Quarantine Act, which is an old act, started around when Canada started, had to do with people coming over from Europe to North America and bringing new infections with them that hadn't been seen here before. So when people first arrived in North America, they would be physically separated from everyone else and had to stay in a separate area for a certain amount of time, even if they had no symptoms, because we wanted to give time for any infections to work itself out and not be introduced into the population that was already here. So the Federal Quarantine Act now has been used by the federal government to require anyone who's done any travel outside of Canada to spend 2 weeks at home. So again, like isolation in this case, you can't even go out for any sort of essential activities. So someone else will have to be picking up groceries and that sort of thing for you, because you are legally required through the Federal Quarantine Act to stay at home. But there's not really any requirements when you're in the home, so you should be able to interact with other people at home while carefully monitoring to make sure you don't have any symptoms, especially a fever. Self-isolation is basically the same thing as quarantine, it's just not a legal term. So we use self-isolation when public health has told you that you need to stay at home because you have been in contact with a case, for example, or you've traveled outside of Manitoba but not outside of the country. So these are people who are not known to be infected or not sick, but have a risk of being infected because they were potentially a contact or they went to a risky area or something like that. So we're trying to keep them separated from the public for the time that it takes for that infection to show itself, to manifest itself, and make sure that they're not spreading it while asymptomatic. And if they get through that whole 14 days of self-isolation and didn't show any symptoms, then it means they probably never had the infection and they can go back to joining the rest of us in social distancing. So the quick summary is social or physical distancing is for everyone. It means minimizing going outside of the home and trying to stay at home as much as possible, but you can interact with people at home. Isolation is for people who are sick, who are infected, and you can't interact with anyone and you cannot leave your home. Quarantine is for people who are not sick but are high risk of having the infection, and they cannot leave their home. No outings at all, even if essential, unless you're going to a healthcare facility because you need help. And self-isolation is the same thing as quarantine, just not a legal term.